Idalia sweeps across North Carolina. Tropical storm Idalia remains a powerful system, although much weaker than it used to be. At 33 degrees north, 75.5 degrees west, the National Hurricane Center expected to turn post-tropical fairly soon, and you can possibly see why with that exposed circulation and starting to look a little bit more like that nor'easter type system that we usually see. At 12 p.m. in Raleigh Eastern Time, it was with 60 mph winds and a pressure of 992 millibars, moving nearly due east at 18 miles per hour. Still contains 60 mph winds, and watches and warnings are still in effect. Here's the current position of the storm right now depicted on the map. It is a little bit out from the coastline now. Wind field on the northeastern side extending up to 180 nautical miles over in that direction. Tropical storm warnings are still in effect for Cape Fear to the North Carolina-Virginia border, the Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds. It is 220 kilometers from Morehead City, 249 from Cape Hatteras, 428 from Virginia Beach, 865 from New York, and 1003 from Bermuda. There are storm surge watches also in effect for part of the coastline there, and some areas are also dealing with flooding concerns right now. So we expect it to move eastwards, turn post-tropical, but could regain tropical storm intensity as it affects Bermuda later on down the line. But storm surge is still the main concern, with maximums of 4 feet expected along the coast of North Carolina. Strong coastal winds and inland flooding are also occurring, and right now a flash flood warning is in effect for Edenton on the Albemarle Sound. That's the main concern with this storm at the present time, and of course the winds could be getting up in Bermuda in a few days. Probably won't be until early next week, however. And here's the forecast, taking a look then through the rest of the week into the weekend, and the storm moves down towards the southeast, and then it does a little bit of a stall motion there, and then could go on to affect Bermuda by early next week. It's not tropical for a lot of that time, but it turns tropical again according to the National Hurricane Center's forecast by early next week, and where it goes after that is still a little bit of an uncertain point, whether it goes completely out to sea or whether it might hook back towards the US East Coast for another round. Right now then, 60 mph winds with decent agreement on that, and there is the forecast cone on our left hand side, and you can see that post-tropical transition and regaining of tropical storm strength. They think it will be on Saturday that it occurs. Doesn't really show signs of strengthening much after it regenerates later on, so I think we can rule out a second hurricane peak. Here's the forecast from the models. Some of them are getting close to hurricane status, to be fair. The HWRF and the H1 models getting to 70 miles per hour there. Then it turns generally towards the northeast, but still even the models aren't fully sure what happens next. And as a matter of fact, wind shear is through the roof in that later period, so I do wonder whether those hurricane models even have it as a tropical storm, or whether it's extratropical there, where wind shear can increase a storm's strength. Here's the GFS forecast as it sweeps out over there over the western Atlantic towards Bermuda, and later on in the forecast period it does affect the island and then gradually moving towards the northeast, but really it does lose strength gradually over that period of time. Non-tropical there, it's quite stretched, no real circulation, and then it just gets back into the groove again, and brief tropical storm, and then it looks like, well, there's a little second beat burst there, but it is struggling by that point. Simulated radar reflectivity looks like this, and you can see it struggles there once again, not much convection, and then it starts to blow up again a little bit there towards the 3rd, 4th of September, and then starts to move on that northeasterly heading, and still, once again, I don't think it ever completely covers the center with good circulation, with good convection there over that time period, so it's never going to look decent again, I think, is the summary from this, but it's strong winds and decent size, once again, could be a threat to Bermuda and maybe for rip currents along the US East Coast. In terms of rainfall expectations, there's still a bit to go for North Carolina before the storm makes itself scarce. And for Bermuda and some of the areas nearby, it's actually quite close to some really high rainfall amounts. Where the storm tracks just south of Bermuda by the looks of things there, there's a large alley of rainfall which probably exceeds 12 inches. Yes, look at that, nearly 18 inches there. And for Bermuda itself, if we zoom in, you can see probably getting up to around 6 or 7 inches of rain, and about 6 inches expected still for North Carolina near the Outer Banks ahead of us right now before the storm departs. So certainly one to watch for rain on Bermuda, possibly 8 inches or more. Sea surface temperatures aren't going to be an issue. They're still very warm, 27 degrees minimum, probably higher than that because this graphic reads a little bit low, and 28 degrees a little bit ahead of the storm after Bermuda. Those temperatures would have been even higher, of course, but Franklin took away a lot of energy, and following in Franklin's footsteps is going to hurt Idalia just a little bit in that secondary phase that it has. But I think its structure is going to be its biggest hindrance. So here's the satellite imagery that we're looking at on the intro, and it certainly looks interesting in its own way, but obviously not super powerful. Looking at the infrared there, the high cloud tops are really far away from the center of the storm. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the National Hurricane Center declare it post-tropical sooner rather than later. But there are still areas of cloud that are sweeping across North Carolina. As mentioned, as we switch to the radar, there's a lot of generally light precipitation across the North Carolina coast and in the interior, but a few areas of yellow are still causing some issues around that area, and the flash flood warning that we was speaking about early on the Albemarle Sound, right around there where I've circled, could cause a few more issues. Big red area of rain just leaving Norfolk, Virginia and towards Virginia Beach, so they'll be in for quite a bit of rainfall throughout the course of this afternoon. But generally, this storm is on its way out, and we look towards potentials for Bermuda.